Is the average cruise ship dying? It's a question I've been thinking about since watching Cruising After 50 and Alex's video on the data from the latest State of the Cruise Industry report. And while it's not dead, the average size cruise ship, it definitely shows that it might be endangered. From the data in that video and in the report, it looks like we're in the middle of witnessing what I'm going to call the barbell effect. It's where the cruise industry is stretching into two heavy-weighted extremes, and the traditional middle ground, those mid-sized ships that we all know and love, seems to be disappearing. Now, if we look at the hard data, back in 2018, mid-sized ships carrying between 1,000 and 3,000 passengers were basically the heart of the cruise industry. They made up 57% of the fleet. But the new order books are telling a different story. By 2037, that middle segment is projected to collapse to 34%. That's almost a 20% reduction in mid-sized ships. And where's all that capacity going? It's moving to the ends of these barbells. Mega ships, the ones that definitely hit the headlines, the giants carrying over 5,000 and up to 7,000 people, are rising from 19% in 2018 to nearly 32% by 2037. And that's the ships that we know about. At the same time, on the other side of the barbell, the small ship and expedition sector is booming. It's growing from 23% to over 33%. The industry is essentially forcing you to pick a side. You're being pushed towards the floating theme parks of Royal Caribbean, or the intimate destination specialists like Oceania, Viking, or Explorer. The middle ground, the Celebrity, the Holland America, is becoming rarer and looks like it's getting squeezed out. If the middle is gone and you don't want a vacation with 7,000 other people, is smaller the better choice for you? Now, why is that middle ground disappearing? Basically, the average cruise ship kind of has an identity crisis. The mega ships, they know exactly what they are. They are masters of the floating resort. That is your destination. They do the spectacles, the shows, the crowds, the high energy entertainment incredibly well. If you want a theme park at sea, they are the gold standard. The small ships, they're more the masters of the destination. They offer the intimacy, the quiet, the unparalleled port access. They know their lane and they stay in it. But what about the ships in the middle? Are they the jack of all trades but the master of none? They try to offer a little bit of everything, but they don't have the space to do any of it perfectly. They have a small slide, a small theatre, and maybe a few more dining options than a small ship, but they don't lack the wow factor of those giant ships or the personal boutique feel of those smaller vessels. And here is the kicker. Even on those middle ground ships, you are often paying for the ghost amenities, the things you're not going to use but you're still paying for, things like climbing walls or the sports court in the brochure. And even I get caught up in how cool they look. But if you never use them, you're still paying the spectacle tax, the money on top to pay for the staffing. Your cruise fare is subsidizing the maintenance of a mini golf course you never set foot on. In the 2026 market, travelers are starting to realize that they don't want average, they want an expert. They are moving to the ends of the barbell, and the cruise ships and their booking orders are moving with them. They want a ship that is the master of its craft, whether that is a 7,000 person party or a 500 person voyage deep into the heart of a city. So what are we losing if these average size ships actually do end up disappearing or becoming very rare? Well, let's talk about one thing that you can't buy back: time. The bigger the ship, the more logistics become a time thief. If you are on a mega ship with 6,000 or 7,000 other people, the ship itself is your holiday. It is your destination because, frankly, it's a nightmare to leave it. Think about it. A mega ship can only dock in industrial deep water ports unless you're very lucky. And these are often miles away from the city centre or the the location or the destination that you want to visit. So when you arrive, you aren't just walking off. You're dealing with a cattle call, queuing for tenders, waiting for shuttle buses, and navigating massive terminal crowds. If you have a 6, 7, 8-hour port call on a megaship, you're lucky if you get 4 hours of actual exploration, of actually seeing what you paid to see. You are a port prisoner. Now, of course, on the other side of the spectrum, the other side of the barbell, these smaller ships, they're designed to get right into the heart of the destination. They dock at the town pier, you finish your coffee, you walk down the gangway, and there you are. There's no 30-minute bus ride or 45-minute wait for a lifeboat tender or taxi once you get off the lifeboat tender. For the DIY cruiser, which we like to look at, the person who wants to see the real Norway, the real Mediterranean, or the real hidden gems of the UK or Alaska, the small ship gives you your time back. That's a good thing, but it does mean you don't get all the bells and whistles of either a medium ship or the mega ships. So the industry is splitting. You can choose a ship that is so big you never want to leave it or can't even find the exit, or a ship that is designed specifically to get you off it and into the heart of the world as fast as possible. So I know what some of you will be thinking is you've spent years earning your points, getting your status up through the levels with NCL or Princess or Royal Caribbean or Carnival, and you don't really want to start from zero on a luxury line or a small ship line. There are, of course, status matches with many of these, so you can take a look at that. But one of the things that cruise lines don't highlight in their glossy new commercials is you don't have to quit your favorite line to get that small ship experience. While the marketing and the cruise magazines, and honestly, many YouTubers are obsessed with the biggest and the newest and the world's largest vessels, almost every major line still has those legacy ships, those ships from before 2018 on their books. These are the ships that were giants 20 years ago, but are now the small ships of that fleet. So you can think of the Vision or Radiance class at Royal Caribbean, the Spirit class at Carnival, or the Sun class at NCL. These ships, while still large compared to the cruise line's definition of small, they still often carry maybe under 2,000 or 2,500 passengers. They can still fit into the smaller ports. They have shorter queues, and most importantly for you, they still honor your diamond, platinum, or elite statuses. So you can keep your free laundry, your free lounge access, your free drinks, or your free Wi-Fi, but you trade in the 7,000 person chaos for a more intimate, manageable deck plan. So with this in mind, we've actually put together a page on bucketlistguides.com, the website, that lists these hidden gems, these smaller ships in the big lines by cruise line. And it's a roadmap for staying loyal to your brand if you are a Princess customer or a Carnival customer, without being swallowed by those big, new, shiny mega ships that they are churning out nowadays. We think in 2026, the smart money is going to be finding on the small within the big. And if you look at that page, you're going to be getting the list of the small ships on your cruise line. Okay, let's talk about money, because this is where the apples and pears comparison usually trips people up. If you look at the sticker price, a mega ship can often, depending how new it is, can look like a cheaper deal. They're going to lure you in with that base fare, but that is rarely what you actually pay. By the time you've added on that Wi-Fi, the soda or the alcohol package, the specialty dining to escape a 5,000 person buffet, the daily gratuities, that bargain is kind of evaporated. You've paid for a mass market experience at a premium total price, if not luxury total price. Now moving to the other end of the barbell, the small end, equally as heavy but smaller, the upfront cost is higher. But on many of these ships, especially the luxury or the expedition class lines, the value is kind of baked in. You aren't being nickel and dimed for a glass of wine or a basic shore excursion, they'll be wrapped in. But here's the real value shift for 2026, is the specialization. The industry is moving away from the one-size-fits-all model of the middle ground cruise ships. And if you want a world-class theme park on a mega ship, you can get it. But they are the masters of that. But if you want a master of the destination or a master of the port, or you don't want to queue for a shuttle bus and you just want to walk off, go small. And don't compare a 7,000 person resort. I've been told off in the comments for doing this when I compare MSC with Explorer, because they're different. That is apples and pears. You don't compare that 7,000 person resort to a 500 or 800 person voyage based on the daily rate. You compare them on the experience per hour, maybe, of what you're getting. On a small ship, every hour you spend in the destination is going to add value. It's a high quality environment. On a mega ship, a huge chunk of your value is spent navigating crowds, managing logistics, queuing. It's about deciding what you want to be the star of your holiday. Is it the ship or is it the world? Because as the middle ground disappears, you can't have both. At least not in the same way. So which side of the barbell are you going to choose for your next cruise? Let me know in the comments below. Our next cruise is the Oceania Marina just before its refit. So it'll be interesting to see how old those cabins are for a start, and if their service is going to be excellent all the way up to when they go into dry dock. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.